the Unlearning Ableism podcast, sponsored by Evenbreak, making the uncomfortable comfortable. Isn't it time we started unlearning? 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. The Unlearning Ableism podcast, sponsored by Evenbreak.
We are back again. Hi, everybody. Welcome to another episode of the Unlearning Ableism podcast, where we make the uncomfortable comfortable. Oh, that was so fancy, wasn't it?
That was snappy. It was snappy. I loved it.
I was practicing in the mirror before we started because it feels like we haven't been alive in ages. But realistically, it was like 3 or 4 weeks ago. But it feels like it's been ages, so I've been practicing. Trying. Today's episode is all around internalized ableism, mental health, accessibility, and we are calling it mindful access. See what we did there? Yeah. I am one of your co-hosts, Jamie. For anyone watching on video, I am a white male. Yes, I'm conscious I am so white, but I'm Northern Irish. And yes, it's been sunny, but I burn in the sun. I have short, dark hair, which has had a haircut, which usually I don't get. As we know, I hate the barbers. My beard is done neatly, and I'm wearing a navy shirt, and I'm sat in my office.
You look beautiful. And I also love the fact that you loaded it there by bringing up sunburn. So thank you for that, Jamie. I am your co-host. My name is Celia Chartre-Aris. My pronouns are she, her, and for anybody using closed captions, I am speaking with a strong Southern English accent. Quick visual description of myself. I am wearing a blue jumper with daisies on it. I am a white female. I have long blonde hair. I'm wearing glasses, and I'm sat in a cream room with a window behind me. If you are observing, for anybody that is looking at me, that my face is a different color from the rest of my body, that is not the lighting. I am currently nursing quite a painful sunburn all across my face. So yes, thanks for that, Jamie, for loading that over. But this
look squishy. Do you know the drumstick squishies? You remind me of the drumstick squishy. But you look so good.
Thank you. Love it.
When we joined behind the scene, I said to Celia, like, oh, did you get your hair done or something? You look so different. And I realised your hair is probably just looking different because your face is a bit red. I think you stood up. You look stunning, babe.
Quick visual description. I am holding my arm up against my face, and you will see the colour difference between my arm and my face. You'll tell what was covered and what wasn't. But yes, I'm nursing a bit of a sunburn because we have had lovely weather here in England for the first time in what feels like forever. The sun has broken, and I am happy being about it.
And do you know what? It's even been sunny here in Belfast. Like, you think of Northern Ireland or Ireland and you think of rain, you think of wetness. Nope, we've had 2 straight weeks of sunshine. Am I still as white as I was going into those 2 weeks? You bet I am. But welcome, as we said, to today's episode. Celia, what have you been up to? Like, I know it's been a month nearly, but what have you been up to? Spill the tea.
Spill the tea. I've been up to a lot. I feel like both you and I together have been very busy. There's been lots of conferences and talking and lots of very exciting projects going on behind the scenes. And the project that Jamie and I have been teasing for what feels like a year and a half is so nearly over the line. And we are so excited about it. And watch this space is all I will say, but that's been taking up a lot of our time and a lot of our stress levels as well. But very excitingly, I get to see you in person on Thursday because we are off to the Scope Awards. So for anybody that doesn't know, we are a finalist in our category, which is very exciting, isn't it? We're currently trying to coordinate outfits right now.
Well, do you know what? Coordinating outfits is so hard because we all know how lastminute.com I am with outfits. And like, I have 2 lovely suits there. I have a black one and I have a navy one. But I was like, I can't wear black because it's sunny. And black is obviously attracts the sun. You get more warm. Not doing that. And then I was like, do you know what? I'm going to go navy and I'm going to go pink. Because what better way for a summery/springy look than a bit of pink? But I'm so excited. And this whole top secret thing, I literally cannot wait till we announce it. And I think we're going to be able to announce it soonish, like over the summer, I'm thinking. We have to talk about exactly it, but it's going to be really soon. But 2 years of a lot of work, a lot of sleepless nights.
It's that long. Like, it just... Remember that first email? But this makes no sense to anyone.
No, soon it'll make complete sense.
From the first emails of talking about this amazing thing that's going to happen to now, it's been a long a long slog, and I hope you're all going to enjoy it as much as we haven't enjoyed it.
No, we have. Let's be fair. We have. I think when we set out to do it, we didn't think it would be as high as a mountain. But I think we've surprised ourselves by how we got to that mountain. And it was pretty much like pointing, you're dragging me, and I was dragging you. But it's nearly there, but it's been an experience. And you'll know soon enough. Some of you know, because as we all know in this live, Jamie can't keep a secret, and Jamie has a little vodka. Last year at the Scope Awards, I was telling everybody. This year at the Scope Awards, they'll probably be the same. There's no point lying. Do let us know where you're watching and dialing in from in the comments if you're watching live. Let us know where you're dialing in from. Say hello. If you do have questions for our guest, who is going to be coming up in about 10-15 minutes, do ask those questions during the live. But to kick us off in today's episode, so we have been doing video pre-records with employers who are partnered with Even Break. But you know us, we like to keep ourselves on our toes and mix things up. So today we are trying something brand new. We're still bringing on employers of Even Break, but instead we're bringing on individuals so they can share their own lived experiences and get us involved and excited about their company. So let's welcome on to the Unlearning Ableism podcast, Jazz. Hi, Jazz. Have we got Jazz?
Jazz has come up, but I can't see Jazz.
I can't see Jazz. Oh, we're not sure what's going on there. We'll try again. Let's bring Jazz back off the stage and then we'll bring her back on. Second time lucky. Let's do this. Let's go again. Celia, I see we have comments. What are the comments coming in?
We have comments about my sunburn. Agreed. Let's hope it does turn to a tan, but I'm such a white individual that my tan never really happens. It normally just stays a shade of pink. And we have someone dining in from Minnesota in the USA. So
welcome. I think we got Jazz. Did we get Jazz?
We have Jazz.
Yay!
I'm sorry, my internet dropped. Just as you were about to introduce it, my internet went. So hopefully that's not a sign of what's to come for the next few minutes.
You're in safe hands with us, Jazz. And I realised that as I was bringing you on, I was trying to prolong your intro because it's like, where's the button to bring Jazz on? Because honestly, I'm registered blind and I'm trying to press buttons. And if I was pressing them where I could see, I'm going to be like this. And I know I need Botox, so you don't have to remind me. But Jazz, welcome to the Unlearning Ableism podcast. Tell us a little bit about you, give us a visual description, and who do you work for?
Cool. Well, thank you for having me. So my name is Jazz Polk. I work for Omnicom Media Group. So I'm part of the European or EMEA team as an e-com director here. So we are a recruitment partner for Even Break, and actually for many years before I joined in the marketing and advertising industry, I was a recruiter and a headhunter myself as well. So lovely to be here today. I guess in terms of visual description, so I'm a white, early 30s female with long blonde hair. I wear glasses and I have a septum piercing, and you can't see it, but I do have a tattoo of Casper the Friendly Ghost to also nod to the fact that I too am of the pale skin variety and basically allergic to the sun. So yeah, that's me.
I believe my Northern Irishness, but when I speak to people who's in different, like on the mainland, I'm like, it's a UK thing, isn't it? We just don't get enough sunshine here, which is why we all flock away whenever we can. Jazz, welcome. Your visual description was spot on, by the way. Thank you for that. Now, we're doing things a bit differently because usually we bring an employer on and it's a pre-record, and it's usually us passing back to ourselves. It's almost like a news anchor thing. So that's not happening right now because my news anchor voice was not ready. But we're doing things differently. Rather than talking about the employer, obviously we want to hear about the work that you're doing. I'm so glad I said this at OMG, because to work for a company, you can use the acronym OMG. Is just serving and living rent free in my head at the moment. But rather than just talking about OMG, tell us a little bit about you, what you do in work, how that's been, and a little bit of what you do outside, because you're so involved in so many different things.
Yeah, absolutely. So, gosh.
We seem to have lost Jazz's internet momentarily there. So, Jamie, ask me some questions and we will fill until... Oh, she's back.
I'm so sorry.
Don't apologize. Technology loves us usually. Sometimes it's like, honey, no, not today.
It's part of the live experience, right? But yeah, so I guess for me, where to start? My experience with disability, I guess, is, it's weird to say, I feel it's kind of a new experience. So for me, I was diagnosed with ADHD 4 years ago, actually this month. So if I cast myself back to that time, it is the pandemic. There's a lot of stress, there's a lot of anxiety. We're all working from home. I'd had quite a stressful year, I guess, working in ecom, like where a lot of people were furloughed. If anything, I was probably working over 10-hour days, like consistently trying to deliver for clients as well. And through that experience, I kind of had a very, very extreme burnout, to the point I was physically ill. Like my hair was falling out, my skin, was I had like cystic acne from head to toe. I stopped eating. Like it was a really kind of dramatic thing. And I kind of came across, actually, it was a video of an influencer it was a woman who was getting her ADHD diagnosis, and she filmed that diagnosis. And I was like, oh my goodness, like this lady is describing like my whole life. And I'm at this point where I don't even know how to talk about what I need. And I was kind of really at breaking point. And so sort of diagnosis, it was kind of one of those moments where getting the answer was like the first part of understanding, oh gosh, I'm living with something, but I didn't know I was living with it. So then you kind of have this like penny drop moment. I was like, oh, that's the reason I struggled in school or dropped out of university, which was for me, I went from being a straight A student to a university dropout in the space of a handful of years. And then navigating like the stresses of work and, what does a sick day mean? How do you tell someone that you've got a headache and you can't talk and you can't turn up to the office that day? So I kind of went through this whole experience of kind of looking back at my past and trying to understand, the different parts of my life that maybe could have been different. And that in itself is a very frustrating and a process where you want to go, gosh, I wish it had been different. But then you also go, actually, look at all the things I'm really good at. And I was doing this all in the context of the pandemic, and actually at the same time became a mother. So I fell pregnant the same month I got my diagnosis. And I think that in itself, when you become a parent, you start again looking back at your own experiences and going, oh, this is the type of parent I want to be, or this is how I want to be. And doing that in the context of ADHD, where you get overstimulated, touched out, noise can become a bit too much. Like I had like a real whirlwind experience of, you really feel the highs and then you also really feel the lows. So when I went back to work in 2023, after having my baby, one of the first things I wanted to do was look for a coach, because I was like, well, I'm a mum, I'm returning back to work, I want to work with someone that can help me navigate my career, but it would be even better if I could work with an ADHD coach as well. So that kind of took me down this whole path of trying to understand actually that you can get ADHD coaches and they're designed to help you figure out how to make things work in the workplace, figure out how to apply your strengths. And, this is almost 2 years post-diagnosis for me. So I'm trying to, again, still figure out what's going on from there. And that led me to learning about the Access to Work program, which is something, I advocate for strongly with people who might be looking for workplace accommodations. So if you don't know about Access to Work, it's essentially a government-funded initiative where if you need workplace accommodations, which depending on, disability, whether it's a physical disability, whether it's an invisible disability such as neurodiversity, I was able to get coaching, noise cancelling headphones, transcription software, training for my employer, all of that sort of stuff. So yeah, it was a bit of a journey. I was able to kind of get that support that I needed, and also have to advocate for myself with my employer, who maybe at the time didn't have as much experience with Access to Work, and navigating that side of it, which led me to co-found an initiative with a friend of mine called Neurodiversity in Media. So what we're really looking at is actually trying to understand what neurodiversity, ADHD is kind of one of the ones that's probably spoken about the most. And I've spoken to a lot of people that as awareness has increased, going through late diagnosis, they're going through that similar kind of penny drop moment, similar trying to understand what is going on in their brain. But actually, when you talk about neurodiversity, there's a whole spectrum of conditions or different neurotypes that can be impacted. And what I didn't know when I started on this journey, that dyslexia actually impacts more people in the population than you'd think, and actually even higher than someone with ADHD. You know, you've got ASD and autism as well, people with epilepsy, dyspraxia, dyscalculia, you know, Tourette syndrome, all things that are just not spoken about in the workplace very often. There's a lot of people that don't feel comfortable talking about it at work. They don't know where to find resources. They don't know if they should say that they need extra support because of the stigma that's attached to it. So by co-founding Neurodiversity in Media, the idea here is to kind of really address understanding that, you know, 15 to 20% of the workforce or the UK population is estimated to be neurodivergent. And actually it's about leaning into those people's strengths to understand actually what makes them good at what they do, but what does a good accommodation look like as well. And we're not focused on any one particular condition. Myself and my friend Simon are the co-founders, but we also have a group of champions who are senior leaders within the industry who are talking about their own lived experiences and conditions as well. And then it's all kind of baked into a manifesto, which we call the 4S manifesto. If I'm moving too fast, let me know. I'm seeing you nodding and smiling, so this is like a monologue.
I'm here for it. Only caveat I want to add is for anyone who is listening outside the US, well, not in the US, for anyone listening outside the UK, access to work is UK only.
Yes.
I'm so sorry.
sorry. Yes. So we essentially have our 4S manifesto. So this is the genesis of this was my friend Simon. He's part of the Media Leaders cohort. So the Media Leader, they do their Future 100 every year. So it's talking about the up and coming generations of talent within the media industry. And he was, as part of the finalists, was offered to write a manifesto to be presented back to a room full of, you know, senior executives at some of the largest media companies in the UK. So I won't list them off, but you can imagine what some of those companies and publishers would look like. So his manifesto on the 4S is essentially based around enabling the talent with the 4S's, which is systems, spaces, safety, and support. Just touching on each of those a little bit to apply some context. Systems is, you know, what are the systems that are enabling your people? Is it the technology that you're using? Do you offer AI note takers? Do you offer spell check? Do you have transcription and recording software? But also, actually, do you have systems in place if someone wants to talk to a manager? What does a conversation framework look like? How do you provide support for somebody who maybe needs to advocate for their needs as well? You've then got spaces. So this is literally the physical space that you're working in or you're asking your teams to come in, which this year with the return to office mandates that, you know, we're all seeing, I think is very topical, because what you hear about is, you know, offices that are, you know, at capacity, people not having quiet spaces to work, which when you're neurodivergent, sometimes you kind of really need to be able to go to a breakout space, but you also need to be able to collaborate also, and then you need quiet as well. So it's thinking about the literal design of your offices, but also if you have like hybrid policies as well, because certain employees might benefit from being at home, but also, you know, working in those office spaces. You then have the third S, which is safety. So this means different things to different people, but for me, it's psychological safety. You know, when I got my diagnosis, I felt comfortable talking to my manager about my experience. I'd just been promoted at the time, so there was this slight fear that if I was open about the fact that I had ADHD, that they would suddenly think I'd get overwhelmed and maybe not want to give me extra work, which absolutely is not the case. But it was being able to have that conversation in an environment where I didn't feel like I was, you know, going to be passed over or treated differently. And I think this is a really important one as well, because if you look at, you know, the recruitment processes and the data points that are out there, a lot of neurodivergent people do not feel comfortable disclosing their condition either during a recruitment process or talking to an employer as well, for fear of bias. So I think this is one that employers can really nail as well, just by kind of providing that space there. And then the final one is support. So it kind of brings all of it together if you think about how, you know, you create that, you know, safe space, but also the support network. And that can be access to work support. helping someone go through their application. It could be funding training for them that you're then going to support there. It can be the benefits that you have in place, and all of those sorts of things. So, we really encourage, businesses, but also employees to kind of look at these 4 S's. We're focused on the media industry because that is the space that I work in, but reality is the principles apply to any organization that, is looking to kind of engage with their talent and make it work for them. So I'm not tracking time very well, but I hope that's kind of roughly 10 minutes there. But yeah, that's me.
You might drop it. And I think what you've done there is you've told a really good story about obviously your own experiences, but the framework that you're using is 3 S's. And as you said, like your media, this can be brought into any industry. It doesn't matter what your field is, organization. It starts with those frameworks. And I really think another great point you touched on is that education piece, because it's not just here's the adjustments, that person's fine. We need to train hiring managers to have these conversations, colleagues to be able to be more supportive, and to not come on your desk and change all your adjustments, and nobody should be sitting at your desk, as has happened to me so many times. But Jazz, I'm conscious that we are time, and I want to ask you, where can people reach out if they want to go for a job at OMG, if they want to ask you even more questions about your role and your involvement, or maybe learn a bit more? Where is the best place to get in touch, and where can they find these jobs?
Yeah, absolutely. So in terms of me, LinkedIn, I'm always on LinkedIn. So feel free to reach out to me personally. We've also got a Neurodiversity in Media LinkedIn page, and we also have a Substack as well. So for anyone that wants to subscribe and kind of read about what we're up to and also download the manifesto, that's there. From an Omnicom point of view, we have our Omnicom careers page. So again, recommend checking that out. Also, if you know anyone at the company and you're looking for referrals, there is a referral scheme that someone else can put you in front of. Because of my background as a recruiter, I'm very friendly with our recruitment team. They are very passionate as well, because we have several neurodiverse people within that team. So they're extremely passionate about inclusion and disability as well as a group. So are a great point of call.
Thank you. I'll notice as well that Annie, they have posted the link in the comments of this live, where you can head on over to the Even Break website as well, and it'll take you directly to the Omnicom page. And Aliona asked, is this going to be recorded / posted? Absolutely it is. So this will stay on LinkedIn for you, so it will always be there. And then our amazing in-house team will also make sure that it's uploaded to all various podcast sites. Insight your chosen preferred one here, and it will also go up on YouTube as well with a full transcription for anybody that needs it. But just answering those 2 questions before we say goodbye. But Jazz, honestly, I want to thank you as well, just kind of touching on what you said about bringing up the process of diagnosis and how that can be such an up and down process mentally, and how it can sometimes throw us off and bring us back again. And I think it's something that not a lot of people talk about. A lot of people focus on the really positive side of it, but also the implications that sometimes it can bring, and understanding ourselves and going on that journey to identify our behaviors and how we live, etc., etc. So I really want to thank you for adding that in, because I think a lot of people will have related a lot to what the story that you told. So thank you.
Brilliant. Thank you
so much, Jazz. Well, enjoy the rest of your week, and it is Mental Health and Global Accessibility Awareness Day this week. I hope you have an inclusive, mindful week.
Thank you, Jazz.
Bye, Jazz. Oh, that was so different. And do you know the part, like, I loved everything Jazz had to say, but it was so nice at the end not to have to do the, do you know, at the end of the videos, we were like, now pass it back to using the studio. And I was like, well, not in a studio, I'm in my office. Now, we've mentioned that this week is Global Accessibility Awareness Day. It is also Mental Health Awareness Week, also Mental Health Awareness Month, depending on which one you're celebrating. And I think we should bring our guest speaker on for the episode. I'm not going to give an introduction to Dustin, because for me, Dustin is a man who needs no introduction, and he's going to introduce himself anyway. So Dustin, welcome to the Unlearning Ableism podcast. Hello.
Thank you so much. It's great to see you both. How are you?
Very good. We're talking about our sunburn, because obviously we don't get much sun in England. And right now I'm really feeling it on my face, as you might be able to tell. Jamie is still sitting there as pale as anything in Ireland.
Yeah, it's Casper. I'm always going to be Casper. Although I will say this. Oh, go ahead, Dustin.
You both look great, and Jamie, your haircut came out fantastic.
It did. You know what? I'm not going to lie. I got this done a few weeks ago after I did a LinkedIn post, And now we're going to the Scope Awards and like, I need my sides done again, but I'm trying to mentally psych myself up. But Celia, I have to say, you said sunburned and Casper white. But if I go on holiday, I do get a tan. I get so much of a tan that, do you know when you close your eyes and you have little wrinkles on your skin? When I get sunburned, you can see the little white wrinkles.
Underneath,
so it's not good. But Dustin, we finally got you on the podcast.
We sure did. Happy to be here. Thanks for having me.
Do you want to do a quick visual description and tell our listeners who may not have come across you, if you haven't, go follow Dustin, tell us a little bit about you and give us a quick visual description.
Awesome. Thank you. I'm Dustin Giannelli, founder of here'sdustin.com. And visual description, I'm a white male with a scruff trimmed beard, maybe similar to Jamie's. And I've got dark hair, short and neat. I'm in my home office. Jazz had a guitar in the background. I do too. Jazz, if you're still there, maybe we should play some guitar virtually at some point. I'm based in Fort Lauderdale, Florida, and originally from Boston, Massachusetts.
Do you know when you said you both had a guitar? I don't know why. I thought you were going to say jazz. We should jazz sometime. And I was waiting for it and I was living for it. So I'm going to pretend you said that and I'm going to get a guitar and jazz with these two. Dustin, we were meant to have you on the show before. We had a cancelled episode last year. I don't even know what happened, Celia. I think we both had a clash or something come up.
It was a busy year. It was a busy year.
I was probably ill. Let's face it, I was probably ill.
I'm not going to point fingers, but no, things happen, and we knew that we would have to get you back on. And what better time to bring you back on than Global Accessibility Awareness Day, which is later in the week, and to talk about mental health, because we talk about accessibility, and I think one of the things that is missing from that conversation is the impact of inaccessibility, that constant being excluded, how that feels, that isolation, and also the frustration. And I wonder if you could talk to us a little bit about that experience, that intersect between inaccessibility and that feeling of being othered or excluded.
Absolutely. You know, it's a very important topic. And as someone who's profoundly deaf, I've worn hearing aids since I was 5 years old. You don't necessarily see them, especially over the screen here, unless I point them out like this. And that, you know, it's more of an invisible disability, which some of us may have. And I was lucky enough to learn at a very young age from my late grandfather, who was actually a double amputee. He had a hook and a wooden leg. So at a very young age, you know, he kind of normalized disability in my household, in my community. And that was an amazing lesson that I was able to learn and really understand how to advocate for others and then advocate for myself, right? This was before my hearing diagnosis when I was 5 years old. I remember my earliest memories were helping him get dressed. He would say, Dusty, get my arm. Dusty, get my leg. Help me put it on. You know, and he'd instruct me on how to help him get dressed. But that was, you know, communication 101 and advocacy 101.
I love that. And I just love that. Do you know that whole thing? If we talk about representation matters, and like when we hear this term representation matters, you think about businesses, you think about marketing, but you don't think about that representation at home and that exposure young people have to other disabled individuals. And I think, like for me, I had uncles who had the same eyesight condition as me. Now, we're completely different, so we are. Like, we all know every individual is different, but my uncles were very much like me. They didn't speak about the disability. And so for me, I probably learned from them, actually, we don't talk about this, where you will learn from quite a young age, actually, this is something we should be talking about. This is something that we should be, I don't want to say normalizing, because I hate that word normalizing, but making it every day that this is a normal part of life.
Why do you hate the word normalizing? Just curious.
Oh, do you know what? Do you know when I was younger, I was labelled, that label of special needs, that label was slapped onto me. And that label to me, it was always the teacher saying, Jamie's not normal. Jamie's not normal. So for me, the word normal automatically created this, almost like this mental block where I almost pushed back against it. But then also, I think, because I don't understand what normal is. I think my autistic and neurodivergent brain is to say, what is normal? Because if somebody said to me, do you want to be a sheep? And I'm like, no, I don't want to be a sheep. I want to be the sheep in the field who's all the colours of rainbow in them. Like, is that normal? That'd be normal if that's normal. But to me, there's no such thing as normal. So it's not that I don't like it. It's just that, what is normal?
I really like what you were saying there around the word normal, because I remember when I was younger and I've had my condition since I was born, but it's degenerative, so it's got worse. And I used to literally sit on my hands and knees and just pray. I don't know who I was praying to, but the word I used to use was normal. I just want to be normal. And that was the word that I so much associated with a breakdown in my own mental health around my condition, was I just want to be normal. I'd give anything to be normal. As I've got older and I'm having those conversations with myself around mental health and the connection with my disability, around mental health and internalized ableism, I've realized that for me, especially, that word normal, I find so triggering, because it instantly takes me back to that space of, I just want to be normal. I just want to be like everybody else. But I think it's and I can see the comments now are saying, I hate the word normal. It's not that I hate the word normal. It's I hate the definition and the association that people have given to the word normal.
Yeah.
Normal should mean differences and diversity and beauty and inclusion. So I'd like the word if the definition wasn't so associated with what it is now. So that's how I perceive that word to be, I think.
Thank you both for sharing that. I think for our audience today and going forward, that's important for all of us to hear and understand, and more importantly, feel, right? We want our audience to feel what our challenge with the word normal is, not just know. And, I think one thing that's important for everybody to understand, me as a profoundly deaf individual, what makes this virtual experience accessible for me is I can read your lips, right? It's challenging at times, but I also have Bluetooth on my hearing aids. And I got this pair of hearing aids right before the pandemic. And I've had hearing aids since I was 5, but this pair is revolutionary, right? Bluetooth is amazing. And at the beginning of the pandemic, captions weren't what they are today in terms of availability or accuracy, so I just like to call out, if you wear hearing aids and they are Bluetooth.
Oh, I think we may have paused.
It has frozen for 1 second.
Oh, the best possible moment. Oh, there we go.
There we go.
You might have to repeat that last message, because you kind of cut off there. But if you could repeat the last thing you said about that message you wanted people to take away from the word normal, and about Bluetooth hearing aids.
Can you say that again, please? And a little bit slower. My hearing aid skipped a little bit.
No problem. And I should preface this by saying, Dustin, we've had conversations, and I always start by apologising, because in Northern Ireland, we speak so fast and our mouth moves beyond the words. So you kind of broke off when you were talking about anybody who's Bluetooth hearing aids at the end. Could you repeat that last part that you had said, just because it had cut off?
If I heard you correctly, repeat the last part that I just said, which was, for other individuals who wear hearing aids that have Bluetooth and they don't participate in virtual calls, you can participate. You can do it. This is what keeps the world connected, both virtually and in person. And, it's important. We tend to just not go there sometimes. But once you try it and get your feet wet, you realize we can do certain things. And virtual calls, they're right at the tip of our fingers. We have access to having great conversations every day.
100%. And like Bluetooth, when you think of Bluetooth has been around for quite some time, and to see it being used now in terms of accessibility, I think it's a huge step forward. Personally, for me, I still get excited that my phone can connect to get to speak it through Bluetooth. Every time somebody calls me, I'm like, I can't hear anything. And I realize it's because it's on my computer in the front room, and I have to come in and turn the Bluetooth off my computer. But I think you've touched on something really important, and that's accessibility and how it's innovating. And I think, to be really honest, we had a conversation before this podcast, and we were talking about how do we make this podcast accessible. and we were talking about having sign interpretation. And we were really honest, and we said, and we've always been really honest about this, is because we have such a global audience, when we went to kind of get our sponsor, we looked at getting interpretation. And when we put it to some of our audience as a test, we were told, well, we want ASL and we want BSL. And then our European audiences wanted some of their own preferred. And I want to ask you, Dustin, because this is something that people come across. When you're in that global audience, what is best practice there? If there is a global audience and they want different interpretation, what would your advice be to those organizations?
So in any event, you want to know who your guests are. And whenever a guest requests any sort of accommodation, you want to be able to offer that at the best of your ability. If it's an ASL interpreter or BSL interpreter, that's, their request. And so we do want to try and make sure we get that. For me personally, as an oral communicator, I don't require an ASL interpreter. However, for my large scale events, I always, encourage it just for the access and make sure that you don't know who might be joining last minute. And so it is very helpful. And, large conferences, there's so many breakout events and keynotes and, can we have an interpreter at every single one? Maybe. It's challenging, but to at least know where the audience requests those accommodations, that's going to be step one.
And I think you've touched on something so important there. It's around the burden of responsibility and shifting it. So often I think especially at the moment, we're living in a system where people have to constantly ask, can I have this? Is this going to be available? And it creates this repertoire, like we're creating the burden, we're creating the hindrance by constantly having to ask. If more people were proactive instead of reactive and just did these accessibility measures as just a basic standard, because as you said, you've got no idea who's going to turn up, you've got no idea who the audience are going to be, it would mitigate so many of the accessibility barriers that we all come up against. But because we're constantly having to ask, and you might not know where that avenue is, or you might not know who to go to, or actually sometimes a lot of us don't know what to ask for, especially if we're diagnosed. Nobody gives you that handbook and says, this is what's going to help you, this might not help you, this might work for you, but this might not work for you. It's very much a learning as we go process. If everybody was a little bit more proactive, I think it'd be a much better place to live.
Absolutely. Just in life in general, being proactive versus reactive, that's where I kind of created my lifelong motto, which is be on offense. And I'll take a moment to share how I came up with be on offense. I had the honor of attending, when I was 11 years old, Michael Jordan's basketball camp in Chicago, here in the States. And everybody knows Michael Jordan in the UK, right?
Yeah. What is that movie? Looney Tunes? He was in the Looney Tunes movie. That's where I know him.
The best basketball player in the world, and I made sure that you know him because I'm the one that taught him everything he knows about the game. I'm only kidding. But I did have the opportunity to go to his camp when I was a kid. And, I remember we got to meet him every day and do a different drill or workshop. It was amazing. And middle of the week, I'm playing well. They actually just announced that I made the all-star team for my age group. And I was super excited. And that Wednesday night, middle of the week, he was giving an auditorium speech. Like he was going to deliver a keynote. So we're all excited. I'm with my new teammates from all over the world. And think of like the biggest auditorium, right, ever. It was at a massive college. And so we go in, and I thought I had a good seat. I was like 40, 50 feet from the stage. But as soon as he came out and started talking, I realized, oh, shoot, I can't hear anything he's saying. And that was 24 years ago. There were no captions. There was no screen zoomed in on his face where maybe I could read his lips. And so I sat there for a full hour and just pretended to hear him. And every time my teammates laughed, I laughed. And every time my teammates smiled, I pretended to smile. And raise your hand if you've ever been in that situation where you pretended to just fit in, right? We've all been there. And that was when I created this motto, be on offense, because in those seats, I was on defense. There was a counselor walking up and down the aisle, and all I had to do, Jamie, was ask her for help and say, hey, you know, I'm hard of hearing. I read lips. May I sit up front? All I had to do. But instead, I sat there and just pretended to participate. So be on offense. That's a mentality. Again, be reactive versus, be proactive versus reactive. And am I always on offense? No, it's not easy. It's a mentality that I have to remind myself to be on offense. If I'm going to a conference, if I'm going to a restaurant or a big board meeting, or, what are some of the accommodations that I succeed with? For example, this is a microphone that connects to my hearing aids. I can put it on the table and it detects sound 360. It's called a Roger, and it connects to my hearing aids. It's awesome. But I also have to let people know I'm a lip reader. So if I'm in a circle and we're all talking and then somebody else comes over, I like to open up my shoulders, include them, fill them in on what we're talking about. And then it becomes a bigger circle. Now we can all see each other, right? Little things like that just welcome us to be more acceptive and inclusive.
Do you know, there's moments on this podcast, and we have these moments where somebody is speaking and sharing experience, and it relates in a way that it hits you, and you're not expecting it to hit you, and you get that. Do that and brought back to those experiences, and you were talking about sitting in that audience and you couldn't hear what's happening, and all I could think about is the times where I've been in work training and I couldn't see the demonstration. Or do you know when you start a new job and they make you shadow somebody and you're looking over the shoulder to see the screen, and I can't do it, but you stay silent because it's better not to rock the boat in your head. And it's so hard to come out of that mentality. And I love that you talk about being on offense. And if you haven't written this book yet, Dustin, this needs to be a book, because I would have it bought and I would have you sign it for me, because it's so relatable. And it's, when you think about it in terms of being in defense, where you just are kind of sitting there, and then you think about the offense, actually standing up and advocating. And that's the hardest thing to do sometimes as a disabled person or person with disability or a deaf person, is having to find the courage to kind of say, I am going to go on offense. I'm going to ask for the support because I need it. I'm not a burden. Just because I've been told no before doesn't mean it's going to happen again. And I think I speak for a lot of people who's in the audience too. And I think you struck a chord really deeply. Celia, I'm going to pass to you a moment so I can breathe and compose myself a little.
Yeah, and I also want to touch on the fact that you mentioned there about what accessibility and inclusion looks like, because I think there is a massive misconception around this word, and people think it's about usability, or people go bathrooms and ramps, and it kind of, the knowledge stops there. But what you were saying there around, if somebody approaches the table and opening up the circle and welcoming them in, whether you know that they identify as a disabled person or not, these are all practices that we should do and should be learning. I think what's incredibly frustrating, and you open with a story there about your experiences with your uncle as a child, is because we aren't exposing, quote unquote, for want of a better word, children to disability, to inclusion, to these social practices about just being a good person, it's coming with us into our adult life that we're behaving and acting in the wrong way, not necessarily always meaning to.
Right.
We're not taught it as a child. It's embedded within us, and hence our branding, Disabled by Society. It is society that is disabling disabled people. This is what's happening. And my next question I wanted to ask was, for anybody that is a parent or works with children or is involved with youth in any capacity, what advice would you give people about starting this conversation around accessibility and around inclusion for disabled people?
Such a good question. One of the most common questions that I receive after my keynote speeches, anywhere from 100 people to 800 people, and there's a big audience, questions. I love this part, right? The Q&A. But one of the most common questions is, well, how do I know what accommodations to provide my employees? The answer, ask them. And the same thing goes back to parents with kids. Now, the challenge there is the kids don't necessarily know what accommodations are out there and what will help them, right? Just like when I was a little kid, my whole family actually had no idea that I was profoundly deaf. It wasn't until the school nurse's hearing exam that we discovered it. One year I passed no problem. And if you remember those school nurse hearing exams, it was a table, a very public event, right? All the kids are lined up and it's like, who's deaf? Who hears normal? And it was really frightening. One year I passed no problem. But the next year, I remember standing in line, looking at the table, and there was a board or like a divider between the nurse and the students. And I'm saying to myself, that wasn't there last year. And I'm starting to register in my brain, this isn't going to work for me. But I didn't know why. Ultimately, I got up to the table and I realized I couldn't read their lips. That was just a natural ability that I learned to adopt. And I learned how to adapt because of my grandfather. You said my uncle, but it was my grandfather that was it's okay. That was a double amputee. And I watched him adapt and adopt different best practices. And naturally, I just did the same thing. But it wasn't until after that my parents realized, oh my God, my son is profoundly deaf. So we went to, Boston Children's Hospital, got a hearing exam. We went right to the audiologist. And as young parents, my parents had to kind of figure that out in the moment. And, I always advise for young parents. I'm in my mid 30s. So a lot of my friends have kids and, they ask me, how do you keep an eye out for what challenges or disabilities, abilities my kid has? Well, we need to expose them to different settings and get early hearing detection tests and things of that nature. So that's what I always advise.
I love that. And I think one of the things I notice, particularly when it comes to having the conversation about disability with young people, is there's the fear. There's the fear from the parents of saying the wrong thing or the kids doing the wrong thing. And I think a really good example of this is, we've seen people talk about kids coming after them, people who are using wheelchairs, people with guide dogs or service dogs, people who have a physical visible disability, and people coming up to them and kids saying things like, what's wrong with you? And the parents getting really embarrassed and trying to almost swoop in and take the kid away because it didn't happen. I'm so sorry. When a lot of people say, well, actually, for such a young age, this is such a natural curiosity to have. And that curiosity is one of the things I love most about children is there's this curiosity that is an innocent curiosity. It's not a judgment. It's not, I'm asking these questions to judge you. I'm asking because I want to know. Whereas I think when we become adults and you hear those questions of what's wrong with you, it's not innocent curiosity. It's more of a, well, you don't look disabled to me kind of statement. And I think there's that innocence as children. And I think exposing children, as you said, to these different environments, to these different individuals, and having those conversations. But also, I think a big part of that is around representation, is ensuring that you're exposing your kids to shows and TV and movies that have disabled characters, because they'll learn that way. And I think if your parents, and I thought of my own parents when they were getting you at the Boston Hospital, where they're trying to get you your diagnosis and things like that. For a parent, I know from a conversation I had with my mum a few weeks ago, involved with the top secret project and Celia's doing, and I asked my mum, I was like, what was the hardest thing about having a disabled child? And she said was nobody gave her the answers. And it's so similar to a disabled person when you say, we don't have the answers, but everyone expects us to have it figured out. And it's the same for parents and caregivers. They don't have the answers. They're having to figure it out. And I think about, just to bring it back on the conversation of mental health, and I think about mental health of those parents and also the internalized ableism that if you're a disabled person, you grow up without representation, you grow up thinking that you're the problem. And I want to ask you, Dustin, how does internalized ableism shape or impact you today? And what do you do about it when it does happen?
It's so interesting. I can relate to that story with having the conversation with my mother. And my mom and dad, you know, they went to the IEP meetings, the individualized education program meetings in school for me, right? I wasn't part of those meetings. And so I think that disconnect where they did that for me really gave me a tough time when I went from K through 12 to college, and then college to the quote real world, the professional world, and as I developed my career. But I'll never forget, you know, just an example. When I went from 12th grade, senior year of high school to college, and I had to figure out the accommodations on my own, I had a note taker. I had a teacher of the deaf. I had speech pathology and an FM system, which is a Bluetooth microphone, and all these things where I had to figure that out on my own in college. And they had a small student accessibility services office. So I didn't even know about it until a month, 2 months into my first year as a freshman. And that was borderline too much time. A month, 2 months, because I was already experiencing depression. I felt like I couldn't do it. I couldn't succeed on my own in college. Had I known about this office before school began, maybe I would have been on offense a little bit better, right? But now I'm backtracked. But I didn't give up, and I got the FM system, and I got a note taker. But let me tell you the story about getting the note taker. They said, oh, you can just ask one of your friends that's in your classes, and they can make $500 per semester. So I'm like, okay, my new best friend, Dan, is in a lot of my classes. I'll ask him. But then I was like, oh, I have to ask my new best friend to do extra work for me. And I remember texting him, asking him to come up to his dorm room, and he was like, yeah, sure. I'm like, I just have to ask you an important question. He's like, okay. And when I got up there and so nervously asked him to take my notes, he was like, dude, that's what you wanted to ask? Of course I'll do that for you. But that internalized ableism of like, you think this is gonna go so many different directions, and all it is, hey, can you help me? And it's hard for us, especially those in the disability community, to ask for help sometimes. You know, I just learned a statistic today. Christina Stevenson posted, if you know Christina, in the UK, disabled adults are more likely, 5 times more likely to experience depression than non-disabled adults, 35% to 7%. And I have to imagine it's very similar here in the US. You know, I've had about 5 bouts of depression, from having lost my dad to challenges with disabilities. But, you know, that be on offense mentality and asking for the help I need helps. So I always encourage us to be open and transparent and just simply ask for help.
And I think you've worded it so beautifully. And I know growing up, my pride in my identity, I think is probably the right word, is got stronger. And I always preface by saying, when I say pride, that doesn't mean I'm sat here going, I love being disabled. Like, it's great. It's not great being ill all the time. Like, that's not what I'm saying. What I am saying is I'm proud of my identity, and this is who I am, and I have no shame in that. But finding that pride to say, you automatically assume, don't you, that the worst is going to happen? Because I think people don't understand that when we are told no, when someone makes fun of us, when something isn't given that we need, it's not just like being told off as a child saying no, or, you know, people always compare it to when you were younger and you were told don't touch an oven because it's hot, and then you touched it, you realized it's hot, and therefore you know not to do it. It's not like that. The system in our brains doesn't work like that. When people do say no, when people are horrible, when our access isn't given, that has a detrimental effect on not only the situation we're in, but also how we feel about ourselves. And it makes us feel like we're a burden in this situation. We're not wanted in this situation. And I think not enough people talk about the mental health consequences of when accessibility isn't given. So finding that strength, and you were saying there, you know, we think the worst is going to happen, because when we've been through it, it's been really bad and it's been really awful to handle. Like, I'm 28 years old now, and now I do not bring people to my doctor's appointments with me, because I know that the doctors will talk to my family, not me, even though I'm 28 years old and I'm able to advocate for myself. Little things like that, where now I'm in situations where I might not be getting the best help possible, where someone can stand up for me and suggest things and be my ally with me, because I know what it feels like has happened historically. So I really want to thank you for flagging that around, you know, having confidence that there are good people out there as well. I think quite often we think so negatively of the world around us because we have been bitten by it so much, especially if we've grown up with our disability as well, and we've had it for a long time. So I really want to thank you for kind of reiterating that help is available, and help maybe isn't even the right word, because we always say accessibility is a human right, not a privilege. Someone's not helping you, they're leveling up the playing field so that you can compete on the same level. So I just, for flagging that, I really appreciate it. And I think a lot of people will relate.
Yeah, absolutely. And, you know, I'm lucky enough where my grandfather taught me another very important message, and that was PMA. You know what PMA is, Jamie?
No, but I'm really interested. I love it, acronym.
Positive
Celia.
mental attitude.
I've heard of that.
Right? So again, Puppy, my grandfather, right? He taught me positive mental attitude, and really take a moment to look at your problems, right? Whether they're big or small, and, you know, really realize, can I turn this negative into a positive? And that mindset, along with Be on Offense, has really helped me over the years. I know we have just a couple minutes, but if you take anything from this conversation to the audience and to both of you, it's be on offense and have a positive mental attitude. And I know it's hard. I know. But that reminder on the wall, PMA, reminds me of him and his smile. And Celia, you're smiling right now. And you know what? Keep doing it. I'm going to be the first to remind each of us to keep smiling, because it's contagious. And then that energy is contagious, right? And one of the things is imposter syndrome. And I know we could talk about this for years, but how to overcome imposter syndrome. What I found is ask for feedback. Be open to feedback. Just naturally living and in the workplace, with your family, your friends. And this helps you sharpen your skills. And, you know, I just had an interesting experience at the gym. One of the trainers was behind me, and she was trying to correct me. I was doing something on the cables incorrectly, and I didn't read her lips. I have my hearing aids off when I'm working out. And then she got in front of me and realized I was a lip reader, but didn't really know. A week later, she saw my Instagram post and said, "Oh my God, I had no idea that you were deaf." Right? So I realized you have to accommodate for yourself 24/7. You have to ask for feedback. You have to be willing to fail. And that's how you overcome that imposter syndrome.
Like, absolute mic drop there. Like, Dustin, I don't know where the time has went, because I could listen to you all day. Like, I feel like we didn't have you on. Usually we have guests on for a full 45 minutes. We were running a little bit behind today. Apologies from yesterday side, but we have to bring you back, because this conversation has just been really empowering for me and Celia. I know, Celia, we have phone calls after our lives and we share notes, and the only note I need to share with this is we need to get you back, because, excuse my French, but you're fudging awesome, my friend, and I just love everything that you do. Conscious we are at time, but before we let you go, Dustin, where can people connect with you? What's the best way?
Here on LinkedIn, of course. Feel free to check out my website and contact me page. My email is dustin@here'sdustin.com. I welcome all feedback, of course, questions, and just continue to connect, because just like accessibility, there is no finish line to this work, and there's no finish line to our friendship.
Absolutely lovely, Dustin. I'm so glad we did this. For anyone watching this conversation, please connect with Dustin. Reach out, say hello, and reach out to your employer who featured at the start of the episode. This episode will be available in 2 weeks from now on YouTube with open captions, which means they are burnt into the video. A transcript is available on a website, www.disabledbysociety.com. May have added an extra W to the website. And then finally available across all major podcast platforms. But for me, Celia and Dustin, thank you for joining us, and we will catch up with you on the next episode. Dustin, thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Appreciate you both.
The Unlearning Ableism podcast is sponsored by Evenbreak, an award-winning global social enterprise run entirely by disabled people for disabled people. So if you're looking for a job in an inclusive employer, or you are an organisation looking for disabled talent, find job listings and set up alerts on the Evenbreak job board today. Visit evenbreak.co.uk or scan the QR code. The Unlearning Ableism podcast, sponsored by Evenbreak.